Hello, I'm Dave Hart. I'm the preacher for the Winslow, Arizona Church of Christ, and I'm so glad that you've chosen to join me today. Today we continue a look in our series of The Church of Christ is Not. The Church of Christ is Not. If you haven't already, I hope you'll watch the two videos before this. But there's all kinds of things that the Church of Christ is, all kinds of wonderful things. It's the Church of the Lord, it's God's kingdom, we can go on and on and on. But there are also some things that the Church of Christ is not, and that's what we're looking at through this series. And today we're going to start out by looking at the Church of Christ is not dead. The Church of Christ is not dead. I remember taking a friend to church when I was probably a teenager, maybe in my early 20s. And after going to church service, he said this church is nothing but a bunch of gray heads, as he called it. And it'll be gone in 10 years. There won't be a church left in 10 years because once these older people passed on, and the church will be gone. Well, 40 or so years later, not only is that church still there, but it's in a larger building than what it used to be in. But many like to say the Church of Christ is a dead church or a dying church, that we are outdated and we need to get with the times and on and on and on. And while it is true, in America, the church has not been growing for a time. We've been losing both members and church buildings. And that's not a good thing, of course, but that is the same situation for most every church group that is out there. In fact, the last stats that I've seen was we in the Churches of Christ are growing slower, are shrinking slower than most any other group that's out there. The few groups that are growing, they're not growing because they're bringing in new converts. They're growing because they have a good breeding program in the church. Their church members are having a lot more kids than our members are in the Churches of Christ or some of the other groups. So if there's a silver lining here, and it's not much of one, we can at least look at the fact that even though we're shrinking slower than most every group that is out there. And it's also a fact that we are growing very quickly in many foreign countries, especially in places like India and Africa and South America. And even here in America, you know, if you are part of my Facebook ministry pages, you will see that just about every day there's multiple baptisms, not only from around the world, but happening in America too. So the Church of Christ is not dead, it's not dying, it's very much alive, but we have to also see it from a worldwide perspective, because the Church of Christ, of course, this doesn't belong to America. Church of Christ is to be everywhere and in every place. And even if we're not doing as good as we hope to be doing, here in America, we are doing very well, as I said, in other places around the world. So let's look at some things from the scriptures. Let's look at some things in the scriptures that talk about the church and how it will always be with us until the Lord returns here on earth and takes the church home. Matthew 16, 18 through 19. Matthew 16, 18 through 19. And I also say to you that you are Peter. On this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So we know the day of Pentecost that Peter and the other apostles, they were given the keys, and they started the Lord's church at that time. And it was also the kingdom that was coming into being. And the kingdom and the church are the same thing. But we have to understand, since the beginning of the church, the devil and evil men have been trying to kill the true church. Don't we see that even in the Bible? What do we see? We see that wherever the apostles or Christians or Paul went, that they were trying to destroy the church, trying to snuff it out. We see the government was against it. We've seen the Jews were against it. We've seen the pagans were against it. All kinds of people. And of course, there again, as I said, the devil is constantly trying to kill the church. And if we look at the timeline of the church, the true church, the Church of Christ, the Lord's church, we see there was at times and extended times that the church had to hide, didn't it? It had to hide from the Jews. It had to hide from the Romans. And then it had to hide from Catholics. It had to hide from Muslims. All kinds of situations like that. And at times, there again, there was just that very, very small remnant. Now, there will always just be a remnant. But sometimes that remnant was very small, and like it says in the book of Revelation, the woman in the wilderness, she had to hide, and it was very hard to find the true church at times. But it was always there, and God says that even death will not prevail against it, that even death will not prevail against it. And we got to always remember the seed principle. We got to always remember the seed principle. Because even if evil men, Satan would totally wipe the church out, destroy the church, the true church, we could still plant the seeds again, couldn't we? As long as we have the scriptures. As long as we have the scriptures, we can always have the true church, because all we got to do is read the scriptures and obey what it says to do. And when we do that, we will have the church. We will have the church. So there's always been people and groups who've sought to keep or to go back to the true church. We see that also. If you look through the history, and sometimes you got to dig a little deeper than others for certain time periods, you see there was always groups. There was a book out, been quite a few years now, and I think it was called Who Were the True Heretics? Who Were the True Heretics? And it wasn't even written by a man from the Lord's church, but it was a man who honestly looked at church history, and he's seen there were always these groups, even during the great Catholic persecution of whenever anybody, of course, would go against Catholic doctrine and Catholic beliefs, not Bible beliefs, but Catholic beliefs, they would put them to death, and they'd hunt them down and they'd kill them. Remember, they kill men for trying to write the Bible in the common language. But if you search hard enough, and there again, the man that wrote this book, he did so. You would see there were always individuals and groups of people who were always striving to go back to the original church. And I read about some of these groups, and it was interesting. Some of them actually went into Muslim territory to get away from the Catholic Christians who were trying to murder and destroy them. But these groups, it's interesting when you read these groups and what they believed, it is almost exactly what we believe today in the churches of Christ, because there again, they were trying to go back and just be the original church. So the church is always going to be here, and like I said, if Satan has his way and can destroy it in a certain area, it can always be started once again with just having the Bible and following the instructions given in the Bible. Daniel 2 verse 44, he says, "And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all those kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." There again, the devil and evil men may hurt the cause of Christ, may hinder it, but they will never be able to put an end to it. And think about since Christianity has started, we have seen great nations rise and fall. We've seen nations that were positive towards Christianity and negative towards Christianity, sometimes within the same kingdom, right? We know that the Romans, who very much persecuted and tried to destroy Christianity, did change their opinion on it with Constantine. Of course, there were some issues there of Constantine. We know that also, but we see that happening. But these kingdoms, these great leaders, these people who have been the enemies of the cross and all that stuff, They come and they go. They come and they go. But the kingdom of God is always there and always will be there as long, there again, as this earth exists. Once it stops existing, once Christ comes back and the earth is destroyed, of course the kingdom will be delivered to the Father, and we'll be in heaven forever and ever after that. So there again, you know, I don't like the fact that the Church of Christ is not growing. I'd rather have the Church of Christ growing in America and building new church buildings and having the more Christians and all that kind of stuff. But we know, just like if we look back through history, sometimes that's not the reality of it. Sometimes the church shrinks to a very small remnant, but it's still there, and it will always be there. And all the kingdoms of the earth and all the evil men, Satan himself, cannot put an end to the true church, cannot put an end to the true church. Psalms 145 verse 13. Psalms 145 verse 13 says, "Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your domain endures throughout all generations." There again, God's kingdom may be small at times, but it will always stand. It will always stand. And there's always people and groups who are coming back to the truth, or coming to the truth. This last year or so, I've seen some reports there again, I can't remember, I think it was from Africa or India, where some of our members of the Church of Christ went in and actually baptized like a dozen denominational preachers. And, you know, of course, once that happens, they go back to their churches, whatever they might be, and they become true churches. They become churches of the Lord's. So there again, it's a battle. It's a battle, and we know that, and we can't get discouraged. We have to keep going and keep doing what we can to grow the kingdom. But part of that is up to us now, isn't it? Now, I realize there again, in certain places, certain time periods, certain cultures, it's harder to grow the church than in other times and places and cultures. But that doesn't give us an excuse to not do our best to evangelize. It's one of the mandates that we have, and it's one of the things that I believe that we have slipped in the Lord's church quite a bit. When I read about a time before my time on this earth, and that the members of the Church of Christ were very, very evangelistic, and they were going out and knocking on doors and setting up meetings and you know, not relying just on the preacher or the elders, but each member felt that they had a duty to spread the word of God. We know the church was growing very, very quickly. But I think what's happened to us to a point is during the 70s and 80s, especially, we just got lazy. We built our buildings and we just kind of said, okay, we're going to go to worship and have our Bible studies, and we kind of got a bunker mentality. You know what a bunker mentality is? You know, you go in the bunker and you just kind of wait there, and you don't go out to where the battle's at, and you just kind of want the whole situation to come towards you, and you can be protected in that bunker, but you don't win wars from bunkers. You don't win wars from bunkers. You know, in World War II, we had that with the French, didn't we? They had all this elaborate bunker system set up. I've seen pictures and TV shows about it. All this underground bunker system, and it was really quite something. You could move equipment and men and ammo and stuff around underneath there, and they had, you know, big guns, and they were waiting for the Germans to come at them. But what did the Germans do during World War II? They just went around it. They just went around it, did an end around, and there they were in the bunker, and they weren't successful. Sometimes I think we in the church, Lord's church, have that kind of mentality anymore. It's kind of like that movie, Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. Remember, if you haven't seen that movie, it was all about somebody building a baseball field, and when they did it, all these, I guess they were ghosts or spirit of these baseball players from the past came, and the whole idea was you build it and they will come. And I think we've gotten that idea about our church building somewhat. And listen, I'm not criticizing church buildings. I'm thankful to the Lord for the church building that I'm preaching from right now. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool to be able to teach and to evangelize from and all kinds of things. But sometimes I think we get too centered with the church building. Yes, it's a great benefit, a great use for the cause of God, but don't make it everything. Because there again, our work is not in the bunker. Our work is outside the church building. We come to the church building to learn about God and to worship God and fellowship and those kind of things. It's wonderful. But when we leave, that's where the mission field starts. And each and every Christian needs to get that idea that they are a missionary. They are a missionary. Look, I'm never going to be a missionary that goes over to foreign countries and things. There's certain health problems I have and stuff that's not going to happen. That's not going to work out for me. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a missionary. I'm a missionary here in this town of Winslow. Everywhere I go, I try to be a missionary, a man on a mission to bring people to the Lord. Whatever I'm involved with. If I go down to the gym, I'm always trying to look for people I can talk to about the Lord. I carry a little leather pouch thing that has some business cards about the church and times and all that kind of stuff. And I'm always looking for opportunities to give those to people and to invite them. And I get to know the people out there when I go to the gym and get to know about them and talk to them. And there again, one of the reasons I do that is so that I can have an opening to invite them to worship service or invite them to a Bible study or try to do what I can to bring them closer to God. So we need to understand that even though the Church of Christ is not dead, there are some churches that are dead. There are some churches that are dying. And I'm afraid there's too many of them. There's too many of them. A lot of our churches, unfortunately, have grown old and they have very few members. And they've basically given up. They basically don't try to get out there and to get new people in. And there's that old saying, and I really like it because I believe it's 100% true. If you don't evangelize, you fossilize. If you don't evangelize, you fossilize. We got to remember that our highest duty as a Christian is to bring other people to Christ. Our highest duty, that's not our only duty, but that's our highest duty, is to do what we can to bring people to Christ. So there again, you may not be a missionary that goes overseas, but you can be a missionary in your neighborhood, in your hometown, in your workplace, in your school, where you do your hobbies, on the internet. My two ministry pages on Facebook, one's over 70,000 followers, and another one's over 60,000. The church page here, I think it's getting pretty close to 6,000 followers, and you can use those. All those followers, all those are people. All those are people, contacts that you can post things, you can encourage, you can send things to. Almost, not every day, but almost every day I'll have people ask me Bible questions or wanting to know if there's a Church of Christ in this area or all kinds of things. I had somebody last night, I believe it was from a foreign country, wanted to know where he could get a hold of a good commentary from the Brotherhood, somebody from the Brotherhood. And I was able to give him a link where he could find that and to help him with that. So we all need to get this sense of our private ministry work of evangelism. There again, we may not go overseas. Now we need to support those people and encourage them, because when we do that, it's just like people that help to financially help us here at this church, here in Winslow. They're part of the work. They're part of the work. When you give money to a missionary, you give money to a church that's struggling or not doing well financially, you become part of that work. But don't stop there. Have your own ministry. Get out there and evangelize. And I realize that different people are going to do that different ways. Some people can be really outgoing and just go up to people and start talking to them. Other people, maybe they're going to use the internet and they're more comfortable with using emails and things like that. Some people just invite. Listen, I tell people that even if you're shy and even if you're not comfortable with giving a Bible lesson or leading a small group study, you can invite. Everybody can invite. And don't get discouraged with that. Listen, I've had to invite I don't know how many people before one or two came. And it's so wonderful when they do. And sometimes we got to work a long time with people. I remember one man, he was a Native American man, and I knew him for years down at the gym, and we'd talk, and he was friendly, and I liked him and enjoyed his company. And he would every once in a while ask me questions about God and the church. And he grew up in the Native American religion. And he would always, kind of start out with that. Well, they call their religion here traditional. I'm traditional, but why do Christians do this? Or why do Christians do that? And this went on for years. And finally, one day I got this Facebook message from him asking what time church service was. And he said that he'd be there next Sunday. And I was just shocked. And I was so happy, and since then, him and his son have both been baptized, and so I'm telling you, don't get discouraged. Get out there and do what you can. Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm so bad at it, I might drive people away. Well, you might have driven people away before. Oh, I don't like that, don't want to do that. But listen, God will excuse that. What's inexcusable to God is if you don't try. If you're not out there trying to do what you can in order to bring others to build the kingdom. Hebrews 12:28 through 29. Hebrews 12:28 through 29. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our God is a consuming fire. Here again, God's kingdom cannot be shaken. It cannot be destroyed. There's people that can leave the kingdom. There's churches. I know a Church of Christ right now. It breaks my heart. I wish they wouldn't call themselves the Church of Christ anymore. They've added the instrument. They have women doing things they aren't supposed to do. I've heard the ministers say that they weren't going to say that denominational people are not saved, even though they didn't come to salvation the way the Bible has said to do it. We know that happens, but the true church cannot be shaken. It is still strong, folks. Oh, the Lord's church is not in trouble. Men's churches are in trouble. Non-Christians are in trouble. The pagan is in trouble, not God's kingdom. You can't shake God's kingdom. It's going to be there, and it's going to be strong. It's going to be strong. And we also have to give up the idea, and this is a hard one. Listen, this is something I struggle with being a minister. We want numbers. We want numbers. I told my congregation, I think it was last Sunday, other than God, I don't think there's anybody in this world that wants the church here in Winslow to grow more than I do. I want it so bad, and I always think about, well, what's the magic thing I could say? Is there an ad I could place? Is there, do we need a spotlight out for what can we do to get people to Christ? What can we do to get people to Christ? But But we got to remember that even though numbers do matter, they don't matter if these people aren't really sincere in becoming Christians. And we need to remember that Jesus, he gave some hard sermons at times, and he lost a whole audience one time. He lost a whole audience. They just walked away. He even had to ask his own apostles, are you two going to go? And of course, they didn't leave, but everybody else, Jesus was great when he was healing people and giving them food and, getting demons out of them and all that kind of stuff. But then he started getting some serious talking with them, and they didn't like that. They didn't like what he had to say, and they left. And Jesus didn't go run after them. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." No, he let them leave. That's hard. I don't like when people leave. Here, like everybody else, we've had people leave for various reasons. I have one man, and this has only happened to me once that I know of. Right when I first started my sermon, he got up and left, and he wrote on Facebook about, it just breaks my heart. That what it was about was he was a man that believed in that we should have service on the Sabbath, and that the Sabbath law was still in place. And my sermon was about how that wasn't, that wasn't valid. Now our day is Sunday. And there again, I didn't like it. But if you're teaching truth in love, God teaching in love, sometimes ministers can get bitter and then get hard-hearted and they can be mean and spiteful. We don't want to be that way. No, but we need to teach the truth, and that if the truth causes people to leave, just like it did with Jesus, then we have to be willing to let them leave. So the whole point of this is that you can have a large church, but a whole bunch of lost people in it, maybe all of them. And you can have a small church. Of course, it can be the same situation. Everybody could be lost, but you could have a small church and you could have very strong, faithful Christians in it. So do numbers matter? Should we strive for numbers? Should we work towards numbers? Yes, of course, with everything that's in us. But at the same time, it is about faithful Christians. It's about faithful Christians. And we have to remember that. The Lord's church is not dead. It is not dying. But the Lord does put it into our hands to work. We have to all be willing to work and do the best that we can to build the kingdom. The Church of Christ is not, we're going to move on to the next not here. The Church of Christ is not a social club, a benevolence organization. It's not here to provide entertainment and fun. Now, do we socialize in the church? Yes, but that's not what it's about. We have these different groups out there, the Lions, the Moose Club, these different things that are social clubs. People get together and they socialize and have fun and all that, and that's what their club is about. And even though there again, we will socialize and maybe have even some social things that we do like potlucks and stuff, that's not our main focus. That's not our main goal. We're not a benevolence organization in the sense that that's all we're about. We know there's different groups out there that try to raise money to save the whales and feed the gophers or whatever it is that's out there. And they try to do some of these works that are in themselves good works. But there again, that's not the main focus. Is the church to be benevolent? Yes, we are. But that's not the main focus. It's one of the focuses. It's one of the three focuses of the church: evangelizing, edifying, and benevolence. But it's not the main focus, because we know that we can feed everybody and they're still going to hell if they don't come to Christ, right? So we do benevolence work. You know, here we try to have a food pantry. In this town, we have a lot of people that are traveling on the freeway and they break down or and I'll never understand this, or they're going someplace, but they don't have enough money to get there, and they want to stop at all the churches along the way and have them fill up their tank and give them food or put them up in a hotel or these type of things. You know, we're not set up because it's not there again our main focus to help everybody. We have a pantry here and we do try to do what we can, but it's not the main focus of the church. Provide entertainment and fun. No, that's not the work of the church. It's not the work of the church. Is it okay for individual Christians to get together and have fun and play games? Yeah. We'll have game nights here at the church building. People bring their board games and we fellowship and we have fun, but that's not the focus of the church. That's not the focus of the church. That's just us getting together in an atmosphere with other Christians and having some fun and enjoying each other's company. But that's not the focus of the church. It's not the purpose of the church. We have to remember what the purpose is. Luke 19:10. Luke 19:10. Speaking of Jesus here, of course. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. If we are supposed to be like Jesus, then we need to have the same mission as Jesus. Now there again, did Jesus do some other things? Did he heal people? Yes. Did he feed people when they were hungry? Yes. Did he meet some people's needs when they had them? Yes. And there again, we have the ability and the resources and all that. We need to do that. But that wasn't his main focus. See, Jesus' main focus was right here. The Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. He's come to look for those who were lost, to seek them. As I said earlier, we don't want to have that bunker mentality. We need to get out of the bunker and we need to seek people. We need to be looking for people. And we see Jesus did this everywhere he went. And Jesus would at times speak to a large group. At times he'd speak to a small group. And at other times he would speak to just one individual, like the woman at the well or Nicodemus. It didn't matter to him, just so he was out there speaking. And we see that there again with Paul and the apostles. They'd go door to door and they would speak in the synagogues and they'd speak in the schools and everywhere they went. They were doing all they can to seek. So we need to seek. It's not, the Bible doesn't teach Calvinism. You know, Calvinism where it says you're either born saved or you're born lost, and they believe that if you're born saved, you're going to find your way to the Lord. The Holy Spirit is going to force you into finding the way. No, the Bible tells us to seek. This is what Jesus did. He seeked. He did what he could relentlessly. And each and every Christian needs to be doing this. Every day we need to wake up and think, okay, what are ways that I can bring the Lord to the world? I could bring the Lord to the world. And I've talked about this in previous sermons, that in our generation, our world, listen, there's a lot of bad things out there. There's a lot of bad things in our culture, and there's just a lot of bad things out there. But at the same time, there's never been a time in the whole history of man that we have an easier time to bring the gospel to the world. Think of all the transportation that we have. We have cars and motorcycles and bicycles and boats and planes and jets and all kinds of different ways that we're able to travel very quickly to many, many different places, be able to bring the gospel. We have more access to the Word of God than man has ever had in the history of the world. Think about it. It used to be you had scrolls, right? And everybody had those scrolls. And they were expensive and stuff. Now, I haven't been there for a while, and I don't think since COVID, but remember the dollar store, you could buy a Bible. You could buy a King James Bible for $1. Bibles are everywhere. And we have all the electronic stuff, all kinds of Bibles. I use Bible Gateway, and there's like, 26 or more different English Bibles, and that's just the English Bibles. They have a lot of Bibles in a lot of different languages. And we're able to do ministry work in different and new and exciting ways that we've never been able to do it before. There again, the internet. Oh, there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet. We know that. There's a lot of things that are not good. But spreading God's word is good. And if they can spread all this evil and ungodliness on the internet, shouldn't we use it for God's glory and God's good? And I encourage everybody to get their own little ministry on the internet. It doesn't have to be a large thing like I'm trying to do. It can just be a small one, but get out there and, put some Bible passages, put some pictures on there, Bible verses, or some different things. Invite people to your church building for worship and Bible studies. Invite questions, all kinds of things we can do out there. But we have to remember that this is our number one mission, is to seek and to save the lost. Romans 12 verse 2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So there are physical things that go on in this world that the church should be concerned with. There's things, for instance, voting. I believe very much that a Christian should vote. And especially there again, this day and age when we got them murdering babies and abortion. And if we want that to end, then one of the big things we have to do is we have to vote in the right people. We have to vote in the right people. We ever want it to end, and every Christian should be concerned with that because the Bible teaches us we're to be concerned of justice. We're to be concerned of mercy. We are to stand up and stand against sin. There's certain things in the world that's fine and we should be involved in, even the church itself. But if the church is going to be involved, it needs to be a spiritual matter. Is abortion a spiritual matter? Oh, yes. People will say, the church shouldn't get involved. It's a political matter. Well, maybe a political matter also, but it's definitely a spiritual matter. And we have to remember that the focus of the church is to be on spiritual things. Getting people saved, keeping people saved, doing good works, doing benevolence works, promoting the kingdom of God, all those kind of things. So we don't want to, in our personal life, be conformed to the world, and we certainly don't want the church to be conformed. And that list of stuff that I just talked about just being a social club, we don't want to ever make the church just a social club. We don't ever want to make it about benevolence. See, the world would love it if we'd just be a benevolent organization. If all that we would do is try to use our money and go out there and feed the poor and things like that. They'd love us then. The problem comes in with is that we have to bring the message along with the food, don't we? We have to bring the message along with the food, and they don't like that part of it. So we have to be a spiritual organization and think in spiritual ways, and be sure that we don't let the world either invade us too much as an individual Christian, and definitely not to invade the church to make it just like some other earthly organization that is out there. John 15 verse 9. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. So we need to realize that there again, if we would If we were just a social club, if we were just a benevolence organization, the world would love us. Now it would. But because we are a spiritual organization, the world hates us. The world hates us. I remember seeing an atheist not too long ago on a YouTube video saying how he hates the Church of Christ. He hates the Church of Christ. There was a Church of Christ minister that he was debating, and of course, when somebody knows the Bible and knows science and they debate somebody that's an evolutionist, we always make them look pretty silly, don't we? And he was very, very angry about that. So the world hates us because we condemn the world. Oh, it's not us as individuals, but it's Christ through us. It's Christ through us. Christ condemns the world. And I'm not talking about, I posted something about the world and being sinful and wrong and all that. When I say the world, I'm not talking about, the earth as a planet. I'm talking about the earthly things, the worldly things that are out there, the ungodly things. So because the world feels that condemnation through us as they should, see, that's another thing we need to realize in this day and age, and I get this all the time, well, don't talk about sin. You're going to make people feel bad. They want the Joel Osteen thing, I don't talk about sin because it makes people feel bad, and they feel bad enough about themselves. We got to talk about sin. Not talking about sin ain't helping anything, folks. We have all these boys and girls who don't think they're boys and girls, and they want their sex changed. And why is that? It's because they're unhappy. They're unhappy. And they don't realize that they're unhappy because they're sinners, because they're separated from God. So they're out there trying to do things to the point of mutilating themselves, cutting things off and sewing things on, and then they find out they're not any happier after that. In fact, last research I saw, that most people who transition from a boy to a girl to a boy within 5 years, they're sorry that they did it. They're sorry they did it. So listen, the world's going to hate us because we have the truth, and we condemn the world, we condemn worldly ideas, and we go against the grain, which really sad is when a church won't do that, when a Christian won't do that, when the Christian accepts things that are ungodly because they're scared, because they've been fooled, because they just want to go along to get along, because their children got involved in it. No, we got to stay the church. It's a spiritual organization, not a worldly organization. In John 17, verse 16. John 17, verse 16. They are not of the world, Jesus speaking here, just as I am not of the world. The Church of Christ's main concern must always be on the spiritual things. Yes, at times, if we're able to, we need to feed people. A man's not really willing to listen to the gospel message if he's hungry, is he? We got to meet physical needs for spiritual reasons at times, but let us never make that the focus. Let it always be the spiritual things, the things of not of this world, but of the kingdom to come. The kingdom has come, we know that, but the kingdom that will be presented to God someday. So let us be concerned about the kingdom, the spiritual things. Let's be concerned about the church, about making Christians, about educating, about building up Christians, about doing the spiritual things that God would have us to do. Let us be careful of the worldly things that we can mix into the church so easily. Oh, I've seen it so many times. There's a lot of things Christians can get together and do that's fine, but it's not part of the church work. It's not part of the church work. If a bunch of Christians went to get together and start a baseball team, that's fine, but it's not part of the church work. Let's keep the church where it needs to be, concerned about spiritual things, concerned about the spiritual welfare of its members and of everybody in the world to bring them to the Lord. If there's any here today that's listening, who's not put on the Lord in baptism, I'd ask you, go talk to somebody in the local Church of Christ. Go visit the Church of Christ. Give them a call. Go by and see them. And tell them that you need to be saved. You need to talk to them about salvation. Also, if you're listening to this, maybe you're shut in or providentially you can't be at your worship service this week, and you're using this as part of your worship service. Don't forget the other acts of worship, to take the Lord's Supper, to sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs unto the Lord. Pray unto the Lord. Give of your means to the Lord. And this can be your sermon study time. If you found this video useful, I'd ask you to share it with others. Thank you for watching, and God bless.